All right, we're back at it again. All right, seeing a place to be. Rick Serritella here with another edition of the All Access Football Draft Watch Show. This is Saturday, May 2nd, 2026. Little special early edition, 9 a.m. Eastern, starting an hour earlier than usual. All right, we'll be here for the next hour of power or so to break down the 2026 NFL draft. We made it through another cycle as we begin our 25th year of draft coverage. We'll kick off our 2027 draft journey next week. But one more week to recap the draft that was. And thank you so much for everybody who tuned in to the live stream extravaganza bonanza. We really we did a doozy with that one, didn't we? An epic day 3 live stream, 7.5 hours on the air. That's my personal record. But I thought we did pretty good there with the 3-day live stream. So thank you, everybody who tuned in, who's got tuned up. And shout out to all of our guests and chat room people. I see George Thomas is ready for the fantasy segment. I definitely have that ready for you, George. And I promise I'm going to get it in. But I do want to warn you, it's going to probably be at the end of the show. So put those patient pants on. But I promise you, I got them. And I got them all covered for you. We'll do a rookie fantasy football preview later on in the show because I promised that. And I'm working on it for the Lindy's magazine that's coming out this summer. I actually have the article done. We're going to post a full article on Monday morning. And we also posted the 2027 Hot 100 list just this week over at allaccessfootball.com. We got a special guest, Anthony Russo, 2027 mock draft. Make sure you go check out his Substack as well. And we got positional rankings, Destination DC. I saw Minnesota, Minneapolis now is the favorite to land the 2028 draft. Cincinnati, the front runner for the 2029 draft. So how about that? All right. George is in it for the duration. Love that. Love all our chat room people. Adams Exploits, Cam Dorner, Doug Dorner, Dave Del Cole. I'm sure we'll see the usual suspects. All right. Now, let's get into the 2026 NFL draft recap. So much to get to. We also posted the 2026 impact meter. We don't do draft grades, right? We don't do winners and losers. We measure the draft in various ways. Just, first round has to be an immediate impact. So we give a round 1 value impact grade. We do an overall impact grade. We also did the best value pick for each draft. And we also gave you one undrafted free agent player to watch for each team. Because on any given week, 25 to 32%, 1/3 of the NFL consists of undrafted free agent players. So just a different way to look at the draft. Overall impact, first round impact, value picks, undrafted free agents. You can find that over on the website over at allaccessfootball.com. Now, we will have Will Donahue later on in the show with some day 3 value picks. But first, I got to introduce my co-host and the star of the show. He is a former recruiting coordinator at UCLA, spent several years in the National Football League with the Cleveland Browns and St. Louis Rams. Also worked in the original XFL, and we're halfway through the UFL season. We haven't snuck too much of that into the show just yet. Eventually to the Canadian Football League, where we had the CFL draft this week. We'll try to sneak a little CFL draft talk in later on in the show, working with multiple organizations in the front office, helping those Toronto Argonauts bring home that Grey Cup a couple of years ago. Former host on the CBS Today show, of course, a mentor over at Sports Management Worldwide for their football GM and scouting course. My co-host each and every week on the All Access Football Draft Watch show, and I shall add newly minted Senior Bowl scout Russ Landy joining us on the show here. Congratulations, Russ.
Thank you, brother. I'm excited. I've been going to the Senior Bowl for over 20 years now, and to be able to be a tiny little part of it and help Drew put the roster together, very excited to be able to help out any way I can.
Yes. Yes. A double applause for Russ Landy. So it's going to just make Mobile that much more fun with our own Russ Landy back in the scouting saddle, making the rounds, breaking down the film like he does each and every week here. He'll be doing that for the Senior Bowl as well. And we got Ixdog 1595 says that's awesome. It is awesome. And we'll be shining the spotlight on the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Bowl, all the bowls. And that's what we do here. Jimbo 215, RIC in the place to be. Great to see you. George is here for the duration. So let's get into it, Russ. We kept them in anticipation for long enough. Let's just dive right into it. Well, let's get a little general overview just of the draft. Of course, we had the day one live stream coverage here, but just give us your general overview and thoughts of the draft. 800,000 plus over there in Pittsburgh. What a scene.
Yeah, I mean, I thought a lot of it was shockingly predictable in terms of we all thought there were going to be a ton of trades because the talent level fell off so quickly after about the 10th or 12th pick. And I think we saw that the back end of the first round, it was just one team after another saying we want to trade up for one particular player. So I think there was a lot of action there. I think the biggest surprise to me in the entire draft was Nussmeier.
Yeah.
This is a guy who at least everybody I spoke to felt was that more of a sort of day two, second to third round type player. But even though, from everything I've been told, the medical is that his back thing, this cyst on his spine, is going to clear up with some treatment, teams got very leery. And that was the reason he fell. I mean, I spoke to a handful of teams and they all backed off because they said, even though it sounds good, the spine is just something, and it affects every throw. So there's just a nervousness that what if everything they do doesn't turn out? We don't feel comfortable with that. So I think the Chiefs is, you talk about a value pick. I mean, it may be the best value pick in the draft because even if he never challenges to be a starter ever in his career, I think worst case, he's a great number 2 quarterback in the NFL for many years. So perfect guy to bring in. So I love it. I think it's a great pick, but that was my stunner of the draft.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that because I actually felt like the Chiefs did have the best value pick on day 3, who was Cyrus Allen out of Cincinnati, who we've just been talking up. And this is a guy that can take the top off of a defense, much like Tyreek Hill. I mean, they've been trying to replace Tyreek Hill since he left. This Cyrus Allen, watch out. I think he's going to make a mega impact. And in fact, I had 3 teams that were kind of like my favorite personal drafts, and the Kansas City Chiefs being one of them because I'm a huge Mansour Delane fan. They go up and get Peter Woods now in the back end of the first round, and you plug him in along that defensive front, right, with Chris Jones next to him, and then you come back and take R. Mason Thomas in the second round, opposite of George Karlaftis. I mean, this is now suddenly one of the best defensive lines in the National Football League. I can only imagine what Steve Spagnuolo is going to do shaking loose with those cannons. And then you draft Cyrus Allen, who I mentioned, Garrett Nussmeier, and they didn't really need him because they signed Kenneth Walker III. Now, Kenneth Walker III has ran into some injury issues throughout his career. They take Emmett Johnson in round 5, the former Heisman candidate there last season, and then Jaden Kennedy, kind of a versatile defensive back. But I thought the Kansas City Chiefs had a very big impact draft, not just for the immediate future, but potentially down the road as well.
Well, I think there's no question. I mean, I spoke to somebody this week, and they said in their eyes that the Delane kid really was the best defensive player in the draft. He's the surest thing of all the players. There's a lot of other good ones, obviously, that went, but this team in particular felt he was the only premier shutdown guy in the draft. Getting Woods in there, you think Woods isn't going to gain some benefit playing next to Chris Jones? Ooh. Just watching the way Chris Jones prepares, getting the fact that Chris is probably getting doubled most of the time, so he's going to face
Jones is going to benefit too.
Yeah. No question. And then you add R. Mason Thomas, a perfect guy on that defensive line because he's a twitchy, athletic guy. You put him with some of those other cats. I mean, This is a team that, to me, remember 2 years ago they were in the Super Bowl, even though
Yeah.
last year went terrible. Now they fixed their D line. Now they do still have to address some of their O line issues,
Yeah.
but the D line is going to be strong going forward, especially going forward for the long term. So yeah, I think the Chiefs have to be looked at as a team that, hey, we never know how it's going to pan out 3 years from now. If we did, we'd win millions because we'd be winning the lottery. But in terms of setting yourself up the best you could to be successful 3 years down the road, I think the Chiefs really hit a home run.
Yeah, they got Justin Fields there to start the season in case Mahomes isn't ready coming off that injury. And now you got Nussmeier in that room. And shout out to George Thomas. Good call. They also signed one of my favorite running backs, Jaden Ott, who went undrafted out of Oklahoma. And the Wyoming tight end, John Michael Gillenberg, there now with Travis Kelce. So really good draft for the Chiefs. Who are some of the other teams? Give us one at a time, Russ. Somebody that you want to talk about here.
Well, I think everybody, obviously, there are certain teams that have been getting a lot of hype, but I really think the Bears need to get some credit for what they did. I mean, you get Tinneman, or however it's pronounced, in the first round. I mean, he may not be a guy that's going to set the world on fire like Sean Taylor, but this kid's going to be a really good safety for a long time. He can run. He's willing to fill the alley. He plays with an attitude. He's got great character. Then in the second round, getting Logan Jones, a guy that I think I mean, if you just put the film on, I think this guy's a first round pick. Now, I get the size questions, I get the durability questions, so that's why he falls. But I think he's just a football player. This kid is a legit guy. I don't know if he'll start this year, but he's going to be a starter for them in the long term. I think Sam Roush, the tight end from Stanford, underrated all-around player. He's a dominant blocker, but this kid's got soft hands. He may not be dynamic athletically, but he's a good short area possession guy. It also gives them a guy a year from now when they lose Cole Kmet, he can step in. They get Xavier Thomas.
What a tight end room this year, though. With
my gosh, right?
Loveland and Kmet Rouse.
It's a great room. And then you added Xavier Thomas. I mean, you talk about one of the most explosive return guys. Talk about a slot guy that can help them out. Malik Muhammad, really intriguing kid, because you talk about, again, I know I always say this in our thing, is if you take his top 20 plays are up there with any corner in the draft. It's the consistency that you want to see from Muhammad. But there's something to be said for just size, athleticism, and talent. Can it be developed? Keyshawn Elliott, probably never going to do much in terms of on the defensive side, but this kid's probably going to be special teams captain early in his career, hell of a teams player, short-yarded star. I think he's going to fill a really good role. And the kid they take late, the Vandenberg, a roll of the dice, the former rugby player. I mean, you talk about an athletic kid who's still
perfect RAS score. I think he had a perfect RAS score.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how athletic he is. So, I mean, you get him in the round 6. I mean, yeah, is there a chance he's not going to make it? For sure. He didn't last the 6th round because he's a sure thing. But what a guy to roll the dice on in the 6th round, a guy with his athletic traits. I mean, yeah, he's a very exciting guy to take a flyer on late.
Yeah, it was. Speaking of rolling the dice, I saw we had 2 international players selected in the draft, which was pretty cool to see. The Eagles being one of them with UR, and then the Eagles are going to sign another one now. So they're going to have 2 international players. They're going back to that wishing well. Obviously, they did it with Jordan Mailata. So I thought that was an interesting sidebar note. I also really enjoyed the 7th round moment with Eli Heidenreich, right? The Pittsburgh native getting the call late in the draft. And I'll tell you what, again, just tremendous value. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm pretty sure they also drafted the kid Nowakowski from Indiana, the Steelers. So now you have 2 kind of dynamic offensive jackknife pieces to really get creative with that Steelers offense. And, as a matter of fact, let me mention the Steelers because they too were one of I had 3 favorite drafts, and the Pittsburgh Steelers were another one. I mean, obviously, Max Ionacher is an animal with the 1st round pick. I love the selection of Jeremy Bernard. They went out and got right? They went out and got Pittman to go opposite of Metcalf. Now Bernard can beat you deep. He can beat you underneath. He can be a gadget guy. Drew Alar, I can take it or leave it, whatever. I get why they did it. Dalen Everett, a nice piece on the back end in the secondary. Jennings Dunker is going to be a nice cog there. I think he can compete for a guard. I love his teammate Caden Weegan, right? And
Yep.
so look, he's another gadgety weapon guy. So you got Weegan, Nowakowski, Heidenreich. Gabe Rubio was a little bit soft when I saw him at the All-Star game. Not a fan there. But Robert Spears Jennings, the safety, in the 7th round, just great value. I thought the Steelers really set themselves up for a deep run. Now they just need Mike McCarthy to convince his old friend Aaron Rodgers to buckle up for one more ride in the saddle.
I couldn't agree more. I like what the Steelers did. I also think some of those guys like Weegan, Nowakowski, the Heidenreich, they bring that Steelers attitude. They bring that sort of tough, whatever it takes attitude. I think Nowakowski's going to start as their fullback. I think he's going to play a ton early. And to me, Alar makes perfect sense because, based on 2025, he's not going to make it as a quarterback. But 2024, he looked really good. So in the 3rd round, you get a big, tall kid with a live arm who's smart. Hey, it's worth a roll in the dice when you have a coach like McCarthy, and he's going to get to learn from Aaron Rodgers.
It's like when they're in the locker room, it's like they're going to be all looking in the mirror, like Mason Rudolph, Will Howard. They're all statuesque, accurate, inaccurate, pocket passing quarterbacks. They're the same guy.
They really are, and I will say it's funny because they sort of went with their draft of we're bringing in Steeler type players, like physical, tough, hard nosed guys. But I gotta also say, in their division, Cleveland Browns, I think they had a vastly underrated draft. I mean, to me, they get the best tackle, they get 2 really good receivers in Concepcion and Boston that weren't getting a lot of hype. They get the safety, McNeil Warren, who a lot of people were talking about, he could slip into the 1st round. Then they get Austin Barber, the big tackle out of Florida. I mean, you're talking about in those first 3 rounds, they legitimately got 5 guys who obviously not all 5 are going to make it. Not all 5 are going to start. But you're talking about 2 or 3 are going to start and contribute. And then they take a roll of the dice on the Taylor Green kid from Arkansas. I don't think he's ever going to be a starting quarterback. But you talk about a guy that could fill roles, a little Taysom Hill, a little do a lot of everything type guy. There's something there that's worth taking a roll of the dice in the 6th round. I don't know if he'll ever develop, but why not roll the dice on a kid with that much athletic ability? Maybe he becomes Matt Jones from many years ago, who turns into a receiver. But there's when you look at the top 5 picks, everything after that's almost cake. Because they really nailed, to me, those first 5 picks, McNeil Warren and those 2 receivers, to me, those are great values.
Yeah, the only thing with the I think I agree. I think they knocked it out of the park, and they're gonna significantly improve their team. The only thing with Taylor Green, if you listen to the show, I'm not much of a fan, but to me, it's like you had 5 quarterbacks in camp last year. Now we finally whittled it down to 2. Like we finally have 2 guys, and I just would like to see Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders battle it out. And I'm not sure Taylor Green is going to eat up too many snaps, but it's like, all right, well, now we got this rookie that's got all this intrigue around him. I just hope they don't force snaps.
No doubt. That's definitely the question.
Yeah.
Hopefully they will look at it and say, this kid's raw. He's going to be scout team. He's going to be PR, and that's our plan for him. And have Deshaun Watson, Shedeur Sanders as the guys. And who's going to win that? I have no idea. I mean, obviously Deshaun's got the experience factor, but he hasn't been good in 4 years. So betting on that is a little risky. And Shedeur, obviously, a very talented kid, but we didn't see the elite player that I think a lot of people saw at Colorado when we saw him last year. So to me, it's a wide open battle.
It's a wide open battle. and two guys, can Watson return back to his form? Can Sanders show you that he's the franchise guy? You hope that one of them can show you something. Otherwise, they're going to be right back drafting a quarterback next year. All right, now I mentioned this a lot throughout the 3 days of the draft, Russ. The just kind of proliferation of these 12, 13 personnel packages. Obviously, it's a copycat league. The Rams, they pretty much changed the whole dynamic of their offense. I mean, they used 12 and 13 personnel at an all-time record rate. And you saw them go draft another tight end this year, right? They drafted Ferguson last year. They got Colby Parkinson. They got Tyler Higbee. Who was they drafted another tight end this year?
The Max Clare kid out of
Max
Ohio State.
Clare. I mean, it's just an embarrassment of riches, right? And I think you're starting to see this be the newest trend. So George Thomas says, "Hey, can you just explain the tight end draft craze? Everyone trying to copy the Rams. Never saw so many blocking tight ends so early, and then a guy like Triggs not get picked." Well, I will say this about Triggs, and I'll let you comment about the blocking tight ends because they did come off early. Triggs was more, I believe, a work ethic thing. And basically, you saw it his pro day. He came out, he did the first vertical jump, strained his hamstring. From what I understand, the guy just barely didn't even really train, didn't want to be there. Questionable work ethic, questionable character. And I think that's why a guy like Trig really slid. But can you speak just to the influx of these tight ends? And you saw Will Kazmarek come off the board early, and then the Notre Dame kid, Eli Raritan, and tight ends, and the Bo Kircher was off the board very early by the Texans. Go ahead, Russ.
Well, I think part of it really comes from obviously over the past decade, the tight end has gone from being a two-dimensional sort of a run blocker and a receiver to basically being a slot receiver for a lot of teams. And I think one of the things that's led to is our quarterbacks are getting pressured a lot. So I think a lot of teams said, well, look at what the Rams are doing. They're using one tight end to go out and catch balls sort of as that slot, but they're using another one to sort of shore up things. And by having one that's maybe a quote unquote better blocker, A, it gives you a better blocker, but B, it makes it a little bit easier to do some deceptive things because teams are always going to focus on the tight end who's a receiver, assuming he's going to go out. And now it gives you the option, oh, we're gonna flex him in and move him right at the snap and let the run blocking or pass blocking tight end go out and catch a short pass. So I think the ability to do different things, confuse the defense a little bit, but have that one tight end who is a strong blocker gives the offense a little bit more strength in terms of protecting the quarterback when you're sending the other tight end out, the slot receiver in what he is in a lot of respects.
Yeah. Also, I'll add to that. Uh, I think we've seen in the last like 2 or 3 years probably the most athletic tight ends we've ever witnessed in NFL history. I mean, these
No
guys.
doubt.
I mean, like Sadiq, like last year's class was unbelievable. Then Sadiq kind of embarrassed them. You had Brock Bowers come out just recently. I mean, last year you had the Fannin kid, you had Tyler Warren, you had Colston Loveland. Like within the last 2 or 3 years, the top tight ends in the league got turned upside down. They're all these athletic guys who can fly and be dynamic weapons now.
Oh, there's no doubt. And I will tell you this, the Sadiq thing is interesting because I texted with a bunch of people after the draft just to get their feel. And one of the people who texted me back, they said, yeah, I really like the slot receiver, Sadiq. And I responded with, what do you mean? He goes, oh, on our board, we actually had him as a receiver. He said they didn't even consider him a tight end because they're like, he is only going to play split out. He's never going to be on the line of scrimmage or on the line in the box. They said he is a receiver. So it just tells you how athletic these guys are getting, that teams actually can classify some of these guys as a receiver as opposed to a traditional tight end. So yeah, the game is changing. These kids at all positions getting faster, more athletic, but tight end, the jump is enormous.
Yeah, I think we've seen that tight end position kind of morph, kind of like the cornerback position morphed when Richard Sherman came out. He kind of set a
Yep.
whole new mold, and I think we're starting to see that. And even next year's class with the LSU kid and the kid from Oregon is actually even more athletic. He's actually a higher rated kid than Sadiq
Yeah.
Jamal. And then the Trades Green from LSU. This guy's making like he looks like Odell Beckham in a 265-pound body, making these one-handed agile catches. It's unbelievable. And now you got the two tight ends from Iowa State who followed Campbell over to Penn State. I mean, it's going to be another loaded tight end class, and we'll be breaking it down each and every week here on the Draft Watch Show, getting ready for our 2027 countdown to Destination DC. Russ will be combing the nation with a fine tooth, looking for some Senior Bowl prospects down there in Mobile. We're excited about that. And I'm going to take a quick commercial break, Russ, and come back and tell you who my favorite draft of the entire weekend was. So we're going to do a quick throwback to the draft live stream Draft Watch Show promo. Check it out. We'll be back in about a minute. Don't go anywhere.
Serritella here for AllAccessFootball.com. Thanks for watching our live stream coverage of the 2026 NFL Draft. Just a quick programming reminder, the All Access Football Draft Watch Show airs every Saturday morning live at 10 a.m. Eastern with yours truly, along with my co-host, Russ Landy, who brings 30 years of NFL, CFL, and XFL scouting experience each and every week. We count you down with hard-hitting analysis, the prospects, the names you need to know. The countdown is on. Destination Washington, D.C. begins now. Make sure you tune in every Saturday morning, live, 10 a.m. Eastern, as we count you down to the nation's capital for the 2027 NFL Draft. Your home for year-round coverage of the NFL Draft and everything pigskin, bringing you the names you need to know first since 2002. It's what we do. Make sure you follow along with the NFL Draft Bible, the official Bible of the draft used by all 32 NFL teams. Thank you so much for supporting independent media. Now, back to our 2026 live stream coverage of the NFL Draft in Pittsburgh. Buckle up!
All right, a little throwback if you were tuned into our 3-day live stream of the NFL Draft. We appreciate your patience, and we're back at it again with Russ Landy, Rick Serritella here on the Draft Watch Show. We're about halfway through, winding down with Russ. We're going to get Will Donahue's take on some day 3 value picks, and then I'll give you the rookie fantasy football rankings later on in the show that I put together each year for the Lindy's Draft Guide magazine. All right. There's one draft that stood out to me, Russ, that stood a little bit taller amongst the rest. And it might have been just because of the situation and circumstance, new general manager, new head coach, new regime, new franchise, new handpicked franchise quarterback, and then the value picks. I mean, these guys nabbed almost all of my favorite players in the draft. And I got to give props to what the Miami Dolphins did here. And not only round 1, they get 2 high-impact players in Caden Proctor out of Alabama, the offensive lineman, Chris Johnson out of San Diego State, who I love, and I love the boldness of the pick with the new regime saying we're not scared of the non-power 4 prospect. We're going to trust our gut, stick to our instincts, pull the trigger, then come back around with Jacob Rodriguez in the second round, man. This is unbelievable. They get my guy Chris Bell out of Louisville, the wide receiver, in the third round, who by the end of the season, I wouldn't be surprised if Chris Bell becomes their number 1 go-to receiver. Then they get Kyle Lewis in the 4th round out of Pittsburgh, linebacker, safety, whatever you want to call him. Just tremendous value. And then I was surprised Kevin Coleman Jr. slid to the 5th round. They plug him Your guy DJ Campbell in the 6th round, Max Llewellyn in the 7th round. I mean, there were Michael Taffy in the 5th round, Trey Moore, the linebacker. I mean, there is just tremendous value. You talk about like getting off on the right foot, changing the culture, bringing in your kind of talents. I think they had 13 swings at a bat here, Russ. There's going to be a whole new roster down there in Miami.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think what you see when you see from Trey Moore to the end of the draft, you see that they're looking at, yes, analytics play a role, yes, different things play a role, but we are not taking players that were not really productive, highly competitive college players. They may not be the best testers or fit the mold exactly, but when you look at Trey Moore, Kyle Lewis, Taffy, Coleman, Campbell, and Llewellyn, just to name some of them, these were guys that were super productive college players. So they're looking at it, I think, saying we're getting day 3 is going to be guys that challenge to be starters, but we know they're going to upgrade special teams. We know they're going to upgrade every room they're in because they're going to force everybody to compete at a higher level. I'll bet you of those picks, you're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, you're talking 8 picks. 2 or 3 are going to become starters eventually. And to me, the funny part is, I actually think that day 3 made up for the fact that I'm not a huge fan of the Proctor kid going at 12 because you're taking a tackle and saying he's already a guard. Well, I don't take guards at 12. That's just not my thing. And I know you love Rodriguez. I still think round 2 is a little bit high for him. So I wasn't as sold on their high picks as you are. But wow, did they crush it from really the 3rd round on, and then you add in Chris Johnson. 100% agree. They are changing the attitude in Miami. There is not going to be anything easy anymore. Every one of these kids, the competes level is going to just go up a notch, and it's going to force every other player that's there to change the way they prepare, the way they practice, the way they battle through injury. I love what they did.
Yeah, great value. And really outside of Chris Johnson, they're all Power 4 program school guys. So
yeah, it's really interesting that they went that way. Yeah, it's sort of all their higher picks. They were top premier school guys, almost like a Mike Ditka thought process.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Russ Landy, Rick Serritella breaking it down, chopping it up. Le'Veon Moss from Texas A&M, undrafted free agent to the Dolphins. Also, yeah, he was a little banged up this past season, and Moss was one of the higher rated grades coming into the year on the Blesto spring grades, but unfortunately, injuries can derail your draft stock, and I think that's what happened to Le'Veon Moss. So, again, just Dolphins doing their homework. They identified guys who slid, whether it's Le'Veon Moss or Kyle Lewis, guys who slid in the draft that they said, hey, Chris Bell, thank you very much. We'll scoop you up. And you just, even if half of those guys hit, I mean, they're doing a wonderful thing there down in Miami. So good to see that. All right, Russ, anybody else you want to talk about here from the draft?
I think the Jets, we have to give them credit for what they did. They went and got really good players, 3 good players right off the bat in the 1st round, and they have 3 first-round picks for next year.
Yeah.
And I'll say on the other end, the Titans were a little confusing to me, and Arizona to me. I don't think anybody doubts that Jeremiah Love is going to be a hell of a player, but when I look at Arizona, they have so many holes. And I mean, do they even have an offensive line that's going to allow Jeremiah to be the player that they want him to be? I just look at it and say, wow, you take Jeremiah Love, who, like I said, stud player, but is he going to have any chance to be successful? And if not, what are they looking at a year from now? Where are they going to be as a franchise? So I wonder a lot of what they were thinking with that pick.
And also, they just manufactured themselves a quarterback controversy because now everybody's talking about Carson Beck. He's a 3rd-round pick. I get it, but if you wanted to truly increase the quarterback competition, maybe you would take one earlier than the 3rd round or sign one in free agency. Now, Basantis, to your point, does help the offensive line a little bit high, I thought, at 34. And then, they go small school, undersized Caleb Proctor in round 4. Reggie Virgil in round 5. I don't know. Carson Sharer, round 6. Jaden Williams, round 7. None of these guys really stand out to me as anything more than just simply role players. And I'm not sure, like Arizona, like you said, they needed to get a lot better. And I'm not sure, like, other than their first 2 picks, I'm not sure any of these guys even make an impact this year. So I'm with you. The Jeremiah Love, like, why did you sign Tyson Algier? Why did you re-sign James Conner? Like, you knew you were going to be picking, like, you knew you were going to have
A
Love,
chance at love. Yeah.
right? So that was a head scratcher.
And
I'm
it's not to
curious.
knock Love.
No, it's just the
the
thought
fit.
process. It's
Yeah.
just the whole planning of it all. I'm curious to get your take on Jacksonville because they've been getting a lot of criticism. I look at their board. I'm sure you can appreciate this, Russ. I don't know if you saw they interviewed James Gladstone after the draft. And he said, he goes, it's remarkable. We before the draft, we did our own mock draft. I guess they had 10 picks or whatever, and they lined up who they wanted in each round. And he goes, it's unbelievable. He's like, it actually panned out where we got every single guy that we wanted. And I saw somebody on Twitter say, well, yeah, it's easy when you take everybody 3 rounds too early. But I don't have so much of a problem with the Nate Bokercher with their first pick at 56 overall. They didn't have a first round pick. I'm okay with that, but Albert Regis in the 3rd round, who I saw at the Shrine Bowl, I'm not even sure he was a combine invite. Emmanuel Pregnon's okay in the 3rd round. I like that one. Jalen Husky, who I'm a fan of, 100th overall, 3rd round pick. That was too rich for my liking. Wesley Williams out of Duke, who we like. But again, just in the 4th round, I don't know. Tanner Koziel from Houston is actually a pick I like. Josh Cameron is a pick I like. CJ Williams out of Stanford. I mean, this is really digging in the crates. Zach Durfree out of Washington. Parker Hughes out of Middle Tennessee State. Like, these guys are not really heavily on the radar. Sometimes, you might be trying to look a little bit too cool and fancy, but I thought Jacksonville kind of overthought this.
I think a lot of it, and obviously we're not in the room, is their GM learned at the Rams. The Rams over the past 10 years have really done a great job of identifying guys on day 3, some of which were not highly regarded by other franchises that turned into players. And from everything I know, Gladstone, who took over as the GM in Jacksonville, has really basically built everything they're doing on what he learned at the Rams. That's the only place he ever worked in the NFL. So it doesn't surprise me that they took some players that many of us say, wow, that's a weird pick, because the Rams have done that for years and it's been successful. So I think Gladstone is bringing over their grading scale. They put a lot of emphasis at the Rams on special teams value in day 3 picks. And my guess is the same thing with Gladstone is looking at. We want every one of these guys to be a contributor on teams. Every one of these guys has got to upgrade us in terms of character, intangibles, and athleticism. So I think it's hard to judge certain teams because they don't take guys that are as well known. And we have to wait and see these guys get on the field. And that's my sort of thought process on the Jags. I don't know enough about kids like CJ Williams and Durfree and Hughes, and even a guy like Cameron to have a great opinion as to whether these really were reaches or maybe they just identified traits that other teams don't put as much emphasis as the Rams and the Jaguars do.
It's going to be interesting because I think it's a make or break draft, in terms of what direction they're going to go. And I want to give them the benefit of the doubt because I liked what they did with their first draft. I just, sometimes I just found myself shaking my head more times than not when Jacksonville made a selection. One other team I want to ask you about, Russ, are the Atlanta Falcons, because I look at their selections and you just start to ask, like, okay, you got to, like, the draft, you got to find the fine line of like when a guy falls and it becomes a value pick, when it becomes a risk versus when it becomes a reward. And then I look at Atlanta and I just wonder, like, did they take too many guys with question marks, right? Like Avian Terrell was their second round pick, which was their first overall pick. He's got some athleticism and size concerns. Zachariah Branch in the third round, we know, got arrested prior to the draft. Then, Harold Perkins, we've talked about, and I get it, sixth round, tremendous value, doesn't necessarily have a true position. He's a positionless football player. Then Anthony Nwana, yeah, seventh round, I get it. It's a dart throw, but very questionable character and never even started at Ohio State. Like, what do you make of this Falcons draft? It just feels like there's more, just a lot of question marks coming out of the draft. Like, you want to feel good about it, but I just have so many concerns about these guys.
Well, I think there's definitely some rolling of the dice. They're betting a little bit on athleticism over maybe production and consistency. I love the pick of Perkins just because you're talking round 6. Yeah, is he somewhat of a positionless player? Yes. But it's not like they took, and I can't remember the kid's name now, the kid who went, 4th overall and has been bouncing around the league for like a decade now because of the super amazing tester out of Clemson, and he's never found a home, right? At least with Perkins, hey, in the 6th round, you're getting a freak athlete who was super productive in college. And I know that medically he may have some issues, but to me, it's a great value. The tackle they took in the 7th round, they're basically rolling the dice saying this kid's a freak of nature talent. We're going to be able to figure out what makes him tick. There's a lot of ifs and maybes in their draft.
Yeah, well, what about Terrell and Branch? They didn't have a first-round pick. Then their first 2 picks, they get, again, questionable guys.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know beyond. I obviously the thing with Branch on a few days before the draft is concerning. I think to me the bigger concern with a guy like Branch is, hey, at USC there wasn't a lot going on. It was 1 year at Georgia. Terrell, major questions as to consistency. Is he going to ever be the guy to be a professional? I don't know. So to me there was a lot of risk taking in this draft, as opposed to when you look at other teams that may have had a risk. Taking one risky guy, but taking 2 or 3 when you don't have a first round pick, that's where it gets a little concerning.
Yeah, I think I definitely looked at Atlanta a little crooked, but for the most part, Arizona, Atlanta, Jacksonville, we'll see.
Washington is also one that makes me say, where was I know they didn't have the top pick in terms of beyond Sonny Styles. They were waiting a little bit. And I just look at like Antonio Williams, is he a guy at 71? And then you look at day 3, it's like they have some okay guys, but none of these guys get me really excited. So, and I'm not, I like Styles, but I don't know if he's a superstar or is he just a good, solid linebacker? To me, he's a very intriguing guy in terms of talent, but I want to see more in terms of can he be a professional? So I don't know. I thought their draft was okay. I just don't know. But Atlanta, you make a great point. It's like one risk after another risk after another risk.
Yeah. Washington, I don't know how much of an impact that draft class is going to have, but I will say Katron Allen, that 6th round pick out of Penn State there, is interesting to keep an eye on the backfield. We'll talk more about that with our rookie fantasy football ranking segment I'm going to do a little bit later in the show. But Russ, that pretty much brings us to the conclusion of the 2026 NFL draft cycle. I'm excited to begin our journey towards destination Washington, D.C. in the 2027 NFL draft. I mentioned at the top of the show now, Minneapolis, Minnesota's at the forefront now for the 28 draft, and Cincinnati, according to Sports Business Journal, is on the leaderboard for the 2029 NFL draft. We've gotten it to the point where it's like the Super Bowl now. They're just awarding these cities years in advance with the NFL draft traveling roadshow. Who would have known? Who would have thunk it? 25
from back at the from back at Madison Square Garden for year after year after year after year to now having to bounce around from city to city. Yeah, I get they want to make it a popular event. I still think it'd be a lot better if they just picked the city and left it there instead of changing every year.
Well, it works out well for the combine. I enjoyed it. Obviously, when it was in New York, it was much easier for me to get to for selfish reasons. But here we are. Times they are a changing, and the NFL draft cycle they are a changing. We'll come back next week, Russ, and begin a look at the 2027 NFL draft. I guess we'll kind of just do a general overview. We got the top 100 posted over there on the website. Any parting shots for the people before we let you go on this beautiful Saturday, May 2nd, 2026?
Nothing huge, but I will say I love the fact that my favorite team in the NFL since I was a kid with the San Diego Chargers, now I'll never call them the LA Chargers, but the Chargers. And I spent 11 amazing years in the CFL, fell in love with the country, fell in love with the people. And for the Chargers to get the two best prospects in the CFL draft in Akeem Mesidor and Logan Taylor, and to steal them away from the CFL, if anybody's going to take them from the CFL, I'm loving that it's my Chargers because I think Mesidor is going to be a very productive guy early. And I think Logan Taylor is going to challenge to be a starter, maybe not this year, but I think he's going to be a starting offensive lineman in the NFL. Big, long kid at 6'6", over 300 pounds with 33 plus arms. He's an athletic kid. I really like him. I think he's going to end up being a better player in the NFL than people give credit for.
Yeah, I'm glad we got some CFL draft talk in there, and that was also this past week. And offensive linemen coming off the board early and often, very expensive position up north there, Russ, as you know. So we get it all in. NFL draft, CFL draft. Russ, we appreciate the time. One more time, congratulations on the new Senior Bowl scouting gig. We'll see you next week, my man.
Sounds good, brother.
All right, there he is, Russ Landy, the star of the show, each and every week on the All Access Football Draft Watch Show. I am Rick Serritella, and our next guest, as a matter of fact, was on location at the Boston College Pro Day to see Logan Taylor hands-on. Okay, we're going to talk about that and some of his favorite value picks, all that and a lot more. When we come back, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to do the Draft Watch Show throwback promo, and we'll come back and talk more NFL draft right after this.
Rick Serritella here for AllAccessFootball.com. Thanks for watching our live stream coverage of the 2026 NFL Draft. Just a quick programming reminder, the All Access Football Draft Watch Show airs every Saturday morning live at 10 a.m. Eastern with yours truly, along with my co-host, Russ Landy, who brings 30 years of NFL, CFL, and XFL scouting experience. Each and every week, we count you down with hard-hitting analysis, the prospects, the names you need to know. The countdown is on. Destination Washington, D.C. begins now. Make sure you tune in every Saturday morning, live, 10 a.m. Eastern, as we count you down to the nation's capital for the 2027 NFL Draft. Your home for year-round coverage of the NFL Draft and everything pigskin, bringing you the names you need to know first since 2002. It's what we do. Make sure you follow along with the NFL Draft Bible, the official Bible of the draft used by all 32 NFL teams. Thank you so much for supporting independent media. Now, back to our 2026 live stream coverage of the NFL Draft in Pittsburgh. Buckle up!
All right, we're back at it again. All right, seeing a place to be. Rick Serritella here on this May 2nd, 2026, and we are almost an hour through the show, and the draft hangover is real, my friends. I thank everybody who tuned in to our 3-day extravaganza, bonanza marathon, a big 7.5 hour grind on day 3, and my next guest was so kind enough to be a part of it, as he has been this entire past draft cycle, doing some great work with the NFL Draft Bible. I mentioned he was on location at that Boston College Pro Day, of course, joining us here. Boy, he's on a roll. He's been on the Draft Watch show for several consecutive weeks here. Of course, we're talking about Big Will Donahue checking in to the Draft Watch Show. Good morning, Will. How we doing?
Good morning, Rick.
So let's just start with Logan Taylor. Since Russ ended there, you had a chance to see him at the Pro Day, one of those CFL draft selections, but very versatile, ferocious, feisty young man. Tell us about him.
Well, Logan started out as a tackle at BC, and then Bill O'Brien wanted to move him into guard just so he can get better NFL looks. And it really showed at his pro day, since he didn't really have the best testing numbers, but when you turn on the tape, he just lights it up on film. He just plays with some nastiness, and you can, once he gets him in defenders in a phone booth,
he's a gamer.
Yeah, he's a gamer, absolutely. And
all right, well, listen,
as well.
We posted the draft value impact on the website earlier this week, and you guys at home can follow along. We got best value picks, best undrafted free agent players, overall impact, round one impact, but value picks is something that we like to focus on, Will, because where you can find value, especially on day 3, can really separate, I think, in terms of the impact your draft class makes, right? Because obviously day 1, day 2, those guys are expected to make an impact. Day 1, you expected to compete for a starting job. Day 2, you are expected to have a key role. But I think when you can find guys on day 3 that make an impact, that's what separates the cream of the crop. That's where talent evaluators earn their salt, right, so to speak. So let's take a look at some of your personal favorite selections from the 2026 NFL draft, wrapping up his first draft cycle with the Draft Bible, and also knee deep in the 2027 draft. We got that top 100 out this week, Will, didn't we? All right, let's talk about your favorite 4th round draft selection from the 2026 draft. Who is it, Will, and why?
I'm going to go Keontae Scott, since he brings the versatility that you asked for in a Todd Bowles defense. He could blitz, he can line up in the box as a linebacker, he can cover, and he can play safety. And he has tremendous depth between Jamel Dean and Benjamin Morrison in the cornerback room. But I think he could play right away in Tampa Bay secondary.
No, I like that pick a lot, and I thought Tampa Bay had a lot of value picks. I thought Ruben Bain was pretty good value at 15 overall, and Ted Hurst, 84th overall, Josiah Trotter, and Keontae Scott was their 4th selection. So very good value, and I would not be surprised if he takes that starting role or slot back role there for Todd Bowles. All right, good one, Will. I like that selection a lot. Who do you got as your favorite 5th round choice in the 2026 NFL draft?
I'm going to go Justin Joly, because I noticed Denver was in need for a tight end, because I didn't know what Evan Ingram's situation was. So Justin Joly is another player who could step into Sean Payton's offense and be a Jimmy Graham type role. So Joly was more of a pass catching tight end coming out of NC State.
Yeah, no, I this one stood out to me too, and I'm going to talk more about Jolie in my fantasy football rookie rankings, because I had a chance to scout him up at UConn, and he made an immediate impact as a freshman. That was a very good Jim Mora find, and more of a compact frame, lacks some height, but he's got enough arm length to go up and get it, and just a bully after the catch. That Justin Joly, 152 overall in the 5th round. And it's funny, I saw Terry Bradway on the scouting trails when Jolie was a freshman at UConn, and wherever my next pit stop was the next day, I ran into Bradway. He's like, yeah, I'm heading up to UConn. I said, oh man, I just came from there. I said, you got to check out this tight end. I was calling him Jolly at the time. I said, Jolly. He goes, oh, man. He's like, I already drafted a Jolly in Green Bay. It didn't work out for us. We're not going there anymore. But Justin Joly out of Denver, a name you need to know. 2 good ones. We're on fire here. Let's go over to the 6th round with Will Donahue's favorite draft selection of the 2026 NFL draft in round number 6. Will, who do you got?
So this player had day one upside before he tore his ACL, and then we didn't know if he was going to be a day 2 selection. So we had him as a day 2 grade. So I'm going to go with Harold Perkins with Atlanta, since he could actually add some value as an off ball linebacker, since you have James Pierce and Jelon Walker as on ball linebackers in Atlanta. So now that you have Perkins, he could be one of those steals that could have an immediate impact at the next level.
Yeah, we just spoke about him as well with our guy Russ Landy, and they also drafted a defensive lineman. The name is slipping me, out of Oregon, I believe they had down there, that did very well on the interior, exterior. You mentioned Pierce, you mentioned Walker. You hope Pierce legal issues get sorted out there. But yes, I agree. Howard Perkins in round 6. Wow. It'll be interesting to see how they use that young man. All right. The 7th round for Will Donahue, and Perkins was 215 overall in the 6th round. Who is your favorite 7th round selection from the 2026 NFL draft, Will?
So I'm going to go Jam Miller with New England, because I think he adds competition to the RB3 room. I mean, look, you have Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson as your top 2 backs, and Josh McDaniels' offense requires to have 3 running backs played. So you have competition in that room with Land Larson, Terrell Jennings, and now you have Jam Miller, who brings immediate speed to that next level. And just to go off Josh McDaniels' offense, you've had 3 backs play, like Sony Michel, Rex Burkhead, James White, and then you had Deion Lewis in 2016 along with LeGarrette Blount, and then James White played in that role as well. So
yeah, I like the Lars Larson mention, the training camp standout from a year ago. It's funny, I see a lot of people kind of assuming Travion Henderson is going to start, but I recall New England kind of leaning more towards Ramondre Stevenson in the postseason, and I thought Henderson was kind of hesitant to hit the hole. And I agree. I think Jam Miller is going to give these guys a run for their money in the competition there in New England. So very highly rated coming into the year. Did run into some early season injuries, so the stats doesn't look gaudy or fancy, but Jam Miller, I like how he can fit into that New England offense, and I'm sure you'll have a enjoyable time watching him right up there in New England as well. Will Donahue, any final thoughts on the 2026 NFL draft as we put a ribbon on it?
Well, I think Miami had a pretty good draft, and so did Las Vegas. And Las Vegas made another interesting pick with Colton Hood in the 4th. I mean, excuse me, Jermon McCoy, who was ranked a top 10 pick, and he slid down to the 4th round. So talk about value picks from that 2016 book that I read.
Yeah,
and
good one.
It really talked about guys that had 1st round value, and then they slid all the way down, and then this is where the value comes into play.
Yeah, well, and Mike Washington Jr., not necessarily a need with Ashton Genty, but 122nd overall, got to find value. And that's what Will Donahue does. He's been joining us here on the All Access Football Draft Watch Show. And what do you say? We'll come back next week, Will. We'll talk some 2027 NFL draft, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it. Thanks a lot, Rick.
All right, there he is, and there he goes. Will Donahue here in the cleanup spot on the Draft Watch Show. We thank you so much. You made it through the first hour of power, but don't go anywhere, because I promised you, and I promised George Thomas, we were going to do a rookie fantasy football segment here on the show following the 2026 NFL draft, and we're going to do just that. We'll take a quick commercial break so I can pull up my rankings, and we'll do one more throwback promo, and we'll be back right after this.
Rick Serritella here for AllAccessFootball.com. Thanks for watching our live stream coverage of the 2026 NFL Draft. Just a quick programming reminder, the All Access Football Draft Watch show airs every Saturday morning live at 10 a.m. Eastern with yours truly, along with my co-host, Russ Landy, who brings 30 years of NFL, CFL, and XFL scouting experience each and every week. We count you down with hard-hitting analysis, the prospects, the names you need to know. The countdown is on. Destination Washington, D.C. begins now. Make sure you tune in every Saturday morning, live, 10 a.m. Eastern, as we count you down to the nation's capital for the 2027 NFL Draft. Your home for year-round coverage of the NFL Draft and everything pigskin, bringing you the names you need to know first since 2002. It's what we do. Make sure you follow along with the NFL Draft Bible, the official Bible of the draft used by all 32 NFL teams. Thank you so much for supporting independent media. Now, back to our 2026 live stream coverage of the NFL Draft in Pittsburgh. Buckle up!
All right, we're back at it again. RIC in a place to be. Rick Serritella here, you out there. Appreciate everybody on the live stream. Hey, if you don't mind taking a quick second, smash that like button, share it, subscribe it, but most importantly, like it. And that way you'll get notified of our new show alerts. We appreciate all the love and support as we put a ribbon on our 2026 draft coverage and turn the page on to 2027 next week. Obviously already in progress online. And Ange, you mind closing this door for me? Appreciate it. And I promised you we'll do a rookie fantasy football segment with you. So all right, so each and every year, Dave Del Cole enters the chat. Love to see it. Each year, and Doug Dorner, great to see him. Go Pats. Yes, I saw that. Cam in New England. Looking forward to catching him up there. And Patriots rookie camp, I think, is May 8th through the 10th. Hopefully I can make it up there and see Cam Dorner and these New England Patriot rookies. Adams Exploits enters the chat. Good to see. Oh, well, we started an hour early. I tried to send out the email blast today to give you guys the heads up. So the usual suspects are now joining the chat room. I do apologize for that. Russ had a scheduling conflict. And for those of you just joining the show, we had Russ Landy, who, in case you missed it, newly minted Senior Bowl scout. So happy for Russ, 30 years in the game, and obviously working at every level, NFL, CFL, XFL, now back as a Senior Bowl scout. So we're so happy for him. We got did the draft review. We had Big Will Donahue just a second ago discussing his value picks. And so obviously you guys know you can always go back, watch the archives. Now, I promised George Thomas a rookie fantasy football segment, and dang it, we're going to deliver on it. And so for about the past 10 years or so, I've been doing the Lindy's football magazines that come out in the summertime. I work on both the NFL and the college football preview guides, and I do a lot of different things for them. We do draft coverage, we do fantasy, we do NFL, bust out players, all kinds of fun stuff. One of the things I do are the rookie fantasy football rankings. And so, good question, Doug. I asked Russ if he wants to switch the show permanently to 9 a.m. and he didn't get back to me on that, but I'll try to announce that sooner rather than later. But that's a good question. But I do the rookie fantasy football rankings, so we're gonna dive into them. I'm gonna give you a little sneak peek preview. Now I will post these in its entirety with a full-blown explanation for every single player on Monday. So keep a lookout on the website for that. But I'm going to run through my rankings, just give you some talking points. And I'll kick it off with quarterbacks, which I'm not going to spend too much time on them. And yeah, I know they're changing all the schedules on us, Adams exploits. I know we're messing you guys up. Love the Mac man, and was happy to do his show and get that in before the draft as well. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on the quarterbacks just because these guys are not going to make much of a fantasy football impact. Now, if you're in a deep league and you want to go with Fernando Mendoza and stash him on the bench, quite frankly, I think the Raiders are going to kind of see how it goes, wait and see approach, and see if Mendoza can beat out Kirk Cousins, and if he outplays him in training camp, which I think he will. I think Mendoza will get the start week 1. Now, what does a full season look like? You're probably looking at 3,300, 3,500 yards, maybe 20 touchdowns, 22 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. I would anticipate something like that. In terms of other quarterbacks, I would say, Carson Beck out of the Cardinals probably has the second best chance to start, followed by Cade Klubnik of the Jets. At some point, the Jets are going to be out of playoff contention. Geno Smith will be leading the league in interceptions like he has in each of the last 2 seasons. And the Jets will kick the tires on Brady Cook, and then they'll get a look-see at Cade Klubnik. So I'll put the over-under at 1.5 starts for Cade Klubnik. We'll see before they move on with their 3 first-round picks next year. Drew Allar is on the board, but I do believe Aaron Rodgers will be back, and I do think that, Mason Rudolph, Will Howard would get an opportunity before Drew Allar. So he's kind of like 4th in the pecking order. And then I have Ty Simpson, who I don't anticipate him to play at all, obviously barring an injury if something happens to Matthew Stafford. But I find this to be a Jordan Love kind of situation in the Rams with Ty Simpson. So 5 quarterbacks. None of them really going to matter much in fantasy football in terms of factoring into your strategy. But we do have some good running back value here. I'm going to give you 10 of them. Obviously, Jeremiah Love, who I think can be a top 5 fantasy back this year. I mean, no doubt about it. The guy can catch the ball, run the ball. He blocks. He'll be in there 3 downs. The Cardinals have terrible quarterbacks, so their offensive line isn't great now, but Love is going to have every opportunity. So I could see 1,000-yard season, maybe another 400 yards catching. And unfortunately, I'm not sure how many the Cardinals. Here's the thing: I don't know how many touchdowns the Cardinals are going to score, and if Connor is healthy, well, Connor usually gets those short yardage goal line carries, so Connor could steal some of the value there from Jeremiah Love. All right, Jadarian Price, obviously. Kenneth Walker III is no longer in Seattle. Zach Charbonnet coming off injury. It's going to be Jadarian Price's job to lose. Now it gets interesting. I have both Penn State running backs next listed because I believe Nicholas Singleton is exactly what the Titans need for that offense. He brings physicality between the tackles runner. It's been a revolving door there. And Tyjae Spears and the other running back there in Tennessee who's always hurt, they're not the answer. But Nicholas Singleton could be. Now, you got to just monitor this broken foot, whatever he had down in January in Mobile, how much of an impact that's going to have. Maybe a little bit of a slow start for Nicholas Singleton, but I think by midseason, he very well could be the Tennessee Titans starting running back. Katron Allen goes to the Commanders out of Penn State. I think, again, he'll probably start off as him and Ja'Cory Krosky-Moret 1-2 punch. But Katron Allen, to me, I think could really emerge as a big-time factor in that Commanders offense. They need another running back to step up. And we just had Big Will Donahue tell you his affinity for Jam Miller. I'm right there with him. Um, the Patriots running game had some inconsistencies in it, and there's a reason why they drafted Jam Miller. In fact, when Elliott Wolf was speaking at the combine, some of the comments he made about what he looks for in running backs stood out to me noticeably because it was almost like he was speaking indirectly, directly to Travion Henderson, who does not hit the hole hard. Jam Miller does. And so for that, I say keep an eye on that young man. All right, Kalen Black, listen, the 49ers picked him up high because he was the number 2 rated running back on their board. And I don't necessarily disagree. Now, they still have Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey is going to be an all purpose back. But let's be honest now. The last year or two, McCaffrey's burst hasn't been there. The big explosive runs have not been there. So there's a little bit more tread on the tire. I would not be surprised if this selection was made with the thought process of maybe easing up and lightening some of that workload for Christian McCaffrey. Now, I don't think Kalen Black gets more than 5 touches a game, maybe 100 touches all season. But, when we're talking about the nitty gritty here, McCaffrey does have some injury concerns and durability issues, right? So Kalen Black to me is a great stash, especially if you do draft McCaffrey, but somebody just to keep an eye on and monitor his touches, monitor his role. All right. Jonah Coleman to me in Denver makes a lot of sense. And, Sean Payton there has been known to ride the hot hand. Jaleel McClain and some of the other runners there in the fold. To me, it's only a matter of time until Coleman gets a shot. And if he runs hot, he'll stay in there. But to me, Coleman is going to get an opportunity at some point, and I like the fit. I also like Damon Claiborne in Minnesota to the Vikings out of Wake Forest. Aaron Jones, we talk about wear and tear. This guy is taking a beating, right? And so to me, the Vikings needed a number 2 running back. Claiborne is in a perfect situation to maximize his touches, earn some more carries with the positive performance. And I think he's going to be a case of instant offense off of the bench by season end. Again, Damon Claiborne, he's a stash candidate that could have a roll down the line. I threw Mike Washington Jr. on here out of Arkansas for the Raiders just because of the size and the speed. Should something happen to Ashton Genty, Mike Washington Jr. gets to run behind an atrocious offensive line, right? So I round out the running backs with Eli Heidenreich, who I mentioned earlier in the show. And this guy's just a jackknife, can line up in the slot, line up in the backfield. I compare him to Danny Woodhead. And again, just wait and see. He's a 7th round pick. See what happens out there in training camp. But I would not be surprised if Heidenreich finds a way to carve out a little role for himself. All right, I'll get into wide receivers and tight ends. I'm going to go over to the chat room. Adams Exploits. What do you think are the odds the Eagles trade Tanner McKee to a team that didn't get a quarterback, and what can they get? I think the odds are very, very great that they do trade Tanner McKee. And I think this was part of the plan when they acquired Andy Dalton and then they drafted Cole Payton. Clearly, there's not going to be reps for all of these guys. So Howie Roseman, who considers himself to be a QB whisperer, believes in developing quarterbacks and then pawning them off for trade picks. And they've done it before in the past. And I believe they will look to do that again come August. Now, what can they get for a Tanner McKee? I think the timing will mean everything. In other words, as the landscape of the league currently stands, I'm not sure you get anything more than a 4th round pick, maybe a 3rd if a team is feeling generous, uh, quite frankly, where would he turn to? Maybe in Miami as an insurance policy. You know, I don't think Cleveland should bring in another quarterback. Arizona, you could state a case. Pittsburgh, maybe, could be the landing spot. But to me, if there's suddenly an injury, watch out now because now the demand would probably warrant a second round pick, probably a third round for certain, right? If your starting quarterback goes down, say Atlanta, Michael Penix gets hurt again. Well, Tua always gets hurt, so they would need a quarterback, right? Something to that effect. So I think a third is fair, but I think you need an injury to occur, like Joe Burrow goes down in training camp again, right? Uh, all right, so fair amount of buzz in Boston around Jam Miller. Yeah, well, deservedly so. I like what I'm hearing on Singleton, Allen, and Claiborne. Yep, definitely good fits there. Let's take a look at some of these wide receiver fits, shall we? We're doing bonus segment here on the All Access Football Draft Watch Show. If you just tuned in, we started an hour early today, so we're actually about 90 minutes into the show. All right, wide receivers. Carnell Tate, to me, obviously, is the big fantasy value here. Cam Ward to Carnell Tate. I mean, the Titans should hope that that's a tandem combination for a decade to come. And I do think Tate is the most valuable here because Jordan Tyson, who probably has more upside, might have a better season, but also you got to hold your breath because he gets hurt every year. And I do think you have to factor that in. I also think you have to factor in Chris Olave is the de facto wide receiver one in New Orleans. At this stage of his career, I'm not so sure Carnell Tate goes in and becomes wide receiver one over Calvin Ridley. I could very well see that. So to me, you got to factor all that in. And then Mekhi Lemon, the Eagles. Let's see how it all plays out. Sounds like A.J. Brown is heading to New England. Sounds like Philadelphia has kind of set themselves up with Dontavian Wicks and Hollywood Brown. Now Mekhi Lemon. I could see, Wicks and Devonta Smith on the outside. Mekhi Lemon and Devontae Smith switching it up inside, outside. Hollywood Brown on the slot. This is going to be a different looking Eagles wide receiver team. Versatile Mekhi Lemon. I think he comes in, makes an immediate impact. I think Tate goes for 1,000. I think Tyson goes for 900. I think Lemon goes for 700 yards. Eagles spray the ball around, every week it's somebody different. Then I'm going to go Jeremy Bernard from the Pittsburgh Steelers, a solid route runner, can win deep, can win underneath. Pittsburgh desperately needed a second receiver. They brought in Michael Pittman in the offseason, but I really like Bernard. I think he brings some versatility, really opens up. This Steelers offense is going to be so much more open with those dynamic pieces, Heidenreich, Nowakowski, Bernard, just a whole different dynamic of on the offense. Now, Omar Cooper Jr., if he had a better quarterback, I would put him up higher there for the Jets because, Garrett Wilson does get hurt a lot, but Geno Smith, I'm not very confident in. And we just mentioned, it's only a matter of time until Brady Cook and Cade Klubnik are in there slinging it around. And so how good are you going to feel about Omar Cooper Jr.'s fantasy production, right? All right, the next one, Deshaun Stribling. Maybe he should be up a little bit higher. I have him with the 49ers. You've got Mike Evans there. You've got Ricky Pearsall there. Evans did get hurt last year. Pearsall always seems to be involved in some drama. I think Stribling will take some time to develop there. I don't know if he comes in and makes an immediate impact splash. The production wasn't always there at Ole Miss. So I think there's a little bit of a transition there for Stribling. I'd proceed with caution. Okay, my next two wideouts are both on the Cleveland Browns, but I have them in reverse order. They actually took KC Concepcion first and then Denzel Boston second. However, for fantasy purposes, I like Denzel Boston more than Concepcion. I think Concepcion is going to be more of a week to week role, gadgety type of player. Whereas Boston is going to be more of your steady, consistent possession type receiver, is going to get a few targets, a few catches each and every week. So I think Concepcion will probably have the bigger weeks, right? He'll also have the up and down season where Boston will be more steady, right? Nothing fancy, but he'll get his numbers. And then Antonio Williams out of Clemson, he goes to the Washington Commanders. I think he's got a great chance to be the number 2 there to Scary Terry. Very polished route runner, reliable hands. Did have some injuries during his time at Clemson, but finds himself in an ideal situation. And then my next guy is my favorite receiver in the draft, and he goes to the Dolphins coming off the season ending ACL. I don't know how much of an impact Chris Bell has in year one. If you're in a dynasty league, well, then, this is going to be a phenomenal pick for you. So Chris Bell, maybe second half of the year, you see him come in, make a big impact. The Dolphins need this guy, and he has all the talent in the world to eventually be the wide receiver 1 there. So I love him for dynasty leagues, not so much for the redraft leagues. All right, one more position to get to, tight ends. I'll work in reverse order. Nah, we'll start at the top. Kenyon Sadiq obviously is one. All right, the tight ends are so interesting. I have Tanner Koziol from the Jaguars, who's an underrated pass catching red zone mismatch. Go watch some film on Tanner Koziol, and I mean, I don't know how you defend this guy in the red zone. It's almost impossible. So I like him for the touchdown ability that he brings. Eli Stowers, again, to the Eagles. This is kind of a transitional passing of the torch. I think Dallas Goedert is in a contract year, so the Eagles will play some 12 personnel. Stowers will get some targets and be a part of the offense, but I think next year is when he really emerges as a key weapon. Marlon Klein out of Michigan goes to the Houston Texans. Look, they drafted him this high for a reason. He's got tremendous speed and athleticism. He could be a slot weapon there. How about Matthew Hibner to the Ravens out of SMU? Coaches just rant and rave about this young man, and he finds himself in a perfect situation to replace Isaiah Likely. Likely went to the Giants. Now you plug in Hibner, opposite of Mark Andrews. This is a great, great fit for the Baltimore Ravens. Oscar Delp to the Saints. You got Jawan Johnson there, who's the starting tight end. Delp brings all the athleticism in the world. Superb traits. You just wonder, where was the production at Georgia? Can the Saints get it out of him? Taysom Hill still in the fold, so you just wonder how many opportunities are really there for Delp. Eli Raritan in New England, much like Stowers in Philadelphia. This is Hunter Henry, the starter. Austin Hooper departed this year in the offseason, so Raritan fills in the backup role and probably eventually replaces Hunter Henry, who's now in his 30s. Max Clare from the Rams, love the player, but we mentioned it earlier in the show, an embarrassment of riches in the tight end room. Terrence Ferguson, Colby Parkinson, Hibner's there, Higbee, now Max Clare. Sean McVay will find a way to get them all done. And then Justin Jolie, I guess, talking to our guy, Big Will Donahue, I have to bump him up a little bit in our rankings here from the Broncos. Very, very explosive pass catcher. I think he'll do well with Sean Payton calling the shots. And then for those of you who do have fullback eligibility as tight ends. This Riley Nowakowski to the Steelers out of Indiana. We mentioned it. Very similar to a Kyle Juszczyk type of fullback who can run the ball, catch the ball, maybe get some red zone looks. But you're welcome very much, George Thomas, for my rookie fantasy football preview. And again, I will post this on the website on Monday, and then go and pick up those Lindy magazines in the summertime. I'll have all kinds of draft coverage, fantasy coverage, college coverage, NFL coverage. We get deep with it. And Lindy's going for over 40 years strong, one of the very few last up and running magazines. So we thank all of you who support the magazines. We thank all of you who support the hard copy NFL Draft Bible, as well as independent media. And that concludes our 2026 NFL draft coverage. Next week, we'll come back. We'll pop open a bottle on the 2027 NFL draft with my co-host Russ Landy. I was Rick Serritella. Shout out to our special guest Will Donahue. Big shout out to all our chat room people today: George Thomas, Adams Exploits, Douglas Durner. I saw Dave Del Cole floating around in there. The Ickles dog, yes. Some newbies, some old faces, some usual suspects. But one thing remains: the All Access Football Draft Watch Show airs each and every Saturday. Typically, we do it at 10 a.m. Eastern. We're getting ready for the 2027 draft cycle. I'm going to do a better job coming up this year of promoting the show. And it's just really been a video live stream on social media. I'm going to try to do my best to convert it into a podcast and distribute it on the podcast outlet so that you can just find it more possible ways, and we could spread the word of the good gospel of the Draft Bible. So please like it, share it, subscribe it. If we can get some of you to just take a quick second of your time and just like the show and spread the word and spread the love, it means so much to me and my family and our entire crew. And big shout out to the NFL Draft Bible Familia. Again, the 3-day NFL Draft live stream was real. And then the 2027 draft coverage is flowing. You can find our 2026 draft recap impact value meter online. We also have the 27 mock draft courtesy of Anthony Russo. Check out his Substack. We got the 2027 Hot 100 list compiled by the Draft Bible front office scouting department. A lot of NFL feedback that we gathered in that one. And then we also have the positional rankings. So thank you. Adams Exploits says, yes, the draft stream was great. I thought we did a good job considering the situations and circumstances. So we appreciate that. And yes, I agree. We need some much needed beach time as soon as those Lindy magazines come out. One of my favorite personal pastimes each and every summer is just posting up on the beach, reading the Lindy's magazine, reading the Phil Steele college football Bible. And I'm happy to announce Phil Steele, who's also been doing this for over 40 years. He now is using the NFL Draft Bible 2027 rankings for his magazine. So a lot of ways to find us. I'm wrapping up another year of my coverage over at bostonsportsjournal.com. Each and every Friday, you can find me on insidetheleague.com with the Friday wrap. And there's also a very good chance when I come back here next week, I may have another special announcement. So buckle up, hunker down, enjoy the rest of your weekend. We got United Football League. We got Seattle